Jethro Tull just released the third album in about 3 years, something they had not done since the 70s. I've been a fan of this band for a long time. So back in 2021, when I heard they had a new album coming out, I was excited to hear what it would sound like. They released The Zealot Gene in early 2022. A lot of people did not like this album. A lot of people complained about Ian Anderson's vocals not being what they used to be, and the fact that it was a completely new band. Most of the band consisted of the same members of Ian Anderson's solo band that was active for the 19 years that Jethro Tull was absent. So when this came out, I was going through a rough time. I had a really bad case of COVID that lasted over a month, so I was quarantined in my room. So this album, The Zealot Gene, was my emotional support album. As a matter of fact, I listened to mostly Jethro Tull during that time, so I thought that Zealot Gene was a really good album. But like I said, a lot of people didn't like this album. A lot of people were saying things like, no Martin Barr, no Jethro Tull, and things like that. So fast forward about a year later, they released RökFlöte. This was the first time since the 70s that they released an album in a short time, and I think it's the shortest gap between albums, such as Stormwatch from 1979 and A from 1980, and I'll be referencing Stormwatch a little later on. But I thought it was a really good album. I enjoyed it. I think I connected with RökFlöte very quickly upon my first listen. That brings us to the new album, the album in question, Curious Ruminant, because I had some problems at first, and I want to discuss that throughout this video. I listened to it the first thing in the morning, and I thought it was good, but it didn't wow me the way that RökFlöte did a few years ago. So then I decided to give it a few more listens, and it was still lacking something, so I decided to sleep on it. Because sometimes when an album comes out, I release my review the same day after a few listens, so maybe I'll do my review Friday night. But for this one, I decided to give it a little bit more time, so that's why I decided to wait a day to review this album. So some background on Curious Ruminant. It's their 24th album, released on March 7th, 2025, through Inside Out Music. And what's interesting is that it's a mix of short and long songs. So for example, there's one song called Drink from the Same Well. It's close to 17 minutes long, and I don't think they've really done a song that long since Baker Street Muse from Minstrel in the Gallery, so that was interesting. And so the band, current members David Goodyear on bass, John O'Hara on keyboards, and Scott Hammond on drums, and they have a new guitar player whose name is Jack Clark, and this is his debut album, with the band at least. I'm going to talk about the songs from Curious Ruminant. What was interesting was that when I did my research, I saw one reviewer talk about how they were like this combination of their Folk Rock Trilogy from the late 70s, which was Songs from the Wood from 1977, Heavy Horses from 1978, and Stormwatch from 1979. So I thought that was interesting that they made that connection, and now I'll give you my personal thoughts as I go through the songs. First track is Puppet and the Puppet Master. I thought it was a pretty good opening track because I listened to it a few times. When I listened to the first few seconds, I heard the soft piano. I wondered where it was going from there, but the song picked up. It was mostly their classic folk rock sound. Ian Anderson plays a lot of flute on the track, and it sounds like something you would hear from one of their albums from the 70s. It was also on this song where you can hear the first guitar solo by the new guitar player Jack Clark, and it's pretty cool because he trades off licks with Ian Anderson's flutes and John O'Hara's keyboards. I like the song a lot, but then again, it took me a couple of listens for it to click with me. Next is Curious Ruminant. This was the lead single. I had listened to this one a few times. It was pretty cool, an animated music video, lots of strange imagery. But I think out of all the songs, this one sounds like it could have come off an album like Heavy Horses or Stormwatch. I think the song really shows off Jack Clark's guitar playing style. As you can hear, he has this almost hard rock type of style, but also mixed with some progressive rock, and he was given a little bit more time to play a solo on this track. This track also shows off David Goodyear's bass guitar, and the song also has some very introspective lyrics. So for example, the first line of the song is, "I count my life in seconds past." So it's the kind of song that makes you think if you read the lyrics. After this is Dunsinane Hill. The first song I have a little bit of an issue with because I think it kind of breaks up the pacing. Sounds like something you would hear on a classical music instrumental album, and the song isn't even an instrumental. Ian Anderson has some vocals that come in after a minute, but despite this, there are some parts of the song I like, such as the bass guitar playing, but I thought the song was lacking something. but it's followed by the Tipu House. This one also had an animated music video, and similar to the previous music video that I talked about, it was a single as well, and more of an upbeat type of song. Really has that retro Jethro Tull sound, and all the instruments are in play. The song is filled with Ian Anderson's flute playing. This one gives me a lot of those songs from the Wood vibes, as it has mostly acoustic guitars and some electric guitars mixed in low. Then there was Savannah of Paddington Green. If you're a fan of Jethro Tull, you know every album is going to have a song where it's mostly just Ian Anderson and an acoustic guitar. And that's what this is. It's mostly just an acoustic song. There are other instruments in the background, but it's similar to something along the lines of Skating Away in the Thin Ice of a New Day. After this is Sticky in Hand. Pretty good song. It's pretty representative of the rest of the music on the album. There's a lot of acoustic guitars. It sounds like there's a mandolin playing and a little bit of electric guitar, but not as much. And I'm going to be addressing that issue a little later, but it's another good song. I don't have much else to say about it. There are 3 more tracks in the album. The next song is called Over Jerusalem. Thought that was a pretty good track. It has this retro sound, an almost soft jazz type of sound to it. I like how it picks up the pace halfway through the song as they're bringing the drums and some other instruments. And it's another song that has some pretty cool electric guitar playing. It reminds me a lot of their progressive rock years, something like a Passion Play or Thick as a Brick. Now it's time to talk about that epic long song I mentioned before called Drink from the Same Well. First part of the song was very soft, mostly Ian Anderson playing the flute and some other instruments in the background, and it goes on for a few minutes. After about 2 minutes, it goes into more of that typical soft jazz meets the Renaissance fair type of folk music they're known for. And it goes on for about 5 minutes until the song makes another shift gears. And then one more time, they focus on the flute and the bass guitar. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking it's an instrumental. It's not. We get some vocals around 8 minutes into the song. And it's kind of like a 2-part song that's split in half, where the first part is all instrumental and the second part sounds more like a traditional Jethro Tull song. And even the second part of the song has a lot of instrumental sections that really don't have a whole lot of lyrics, but it's a good song. I liked it, and I like pretty much everything I heard so far. There's one more song called Interim Sleep. It's a short track. It's 2.5 minutes long. It sounds like one of those meditation tapes you would listen to, and they tell you to close your eyes, imagine you're walking in the sand, or something like that. That's what it reminds me of. It's kind of a filler track, but they could have ended the album with Drink from the Same Well, but they just tagged this one on. It's okay. But in conclusion, I had liked it a little more after listening to it a few times, but despite this, I still think it has some issues. I think they could have given the new guitar player Jack Clark some more places to shine. I thought the album was lacking a little bit of his electric guitar, so I don't know if they were giving him that Jason Newsted treatment or something like that because he's a new guy. But they could have given him some more time on the album. But despite this, it's definitely a Jethro Tull album. I agree with the fact a lot of it reminds me of the Folk Rock Trilogy from the late 70s. There's some stuff that reminds me of their progressive rock days, such as The Passion Play or Thick as a Brick. So it's a very well-rounded album. I enjoyed it. And I'm still going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think it might be the weakest of the 3 most recent albums, including Zealot Gene and RökFlöte. But those are my thoughts. And let me know your thoughts so we can talk about them. In the meantime, check out my review of RökFlöte, which I did a few years ago. You can check that out right here. Thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe. If you have not already, I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. I'll see you in the next one.